by Reading Co-Chief Executive. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Joe Jacobson. Thank you very much for joining me, mate. Really looking forward to having a chat in person for the first time as well. It's at Reading's training ground, which is very, very nice, I've got to say. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Very fortunate.
Indeed. So, what I wanted to do today is I'm obviously going to talk to you about your new role, adjusting to football or the other side of football, I guess. But I wanted to take you back a little bit because I've been enjoying recently. I've spoken to a few sort of ex-footballers, current footballers about that transition from playing to not playing and how it could be difficult. But also the early years of transitioning from being a child to playing men's football. So obviously you started with Cardiff City. What did that look like at that time? So when you were sort of on the brink of the first team and stuff.
I think you're a bit naive to it, really. I think you come through the system. I joined Cardiff at 9 years old. You come through the system. I was very fortunate. It was quite smooth sailing. You get a contract, you get a contract. I got offered a YTS. And for the first 2 years, I was in it. I was never kind of one of the best players, but I was consistent. And I think I took that through later on in my career. And it wasn't until my third year YTS where I don't know what changed, but I started just to do well. I was playing for the reserves. I got involved in Wales at the under 21 level. And a couple of times that season, I went and trained with the first team under Dave Jones. And it was only right at the end of the season where I think there was me, Darcy Blake, Curtis McDonald and Jamal Easter who got called into the first team squad to travel. Darcy was on the bench. It was Crewe away. I think it was about 3 games of the season left. And then I didn't get on the pitch. And I remember not feeling gutted, disappointed. I was just happy to be there, involved. Yeah. And then I remember that week at Ninian Park, that was our base at the time. And Dave Jones walked past me and said, "Did you want to play on the weekend?" I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to," a bit oblivious to the question. And he's like, "Well, why didn't you say?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't know I could say." This was the manager of the football club. I didn't want to. I was young. I never had to approach the manager or have those conversations. So I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And then he said, "Okay, fine." And that weekend, then I was on the bench at home to Norwich. Fortunately, I came on. What I remember from the day is I was warming up. I must have warmed up for about 75 minutes non-stop. I didn't want to sit down. I'm a Cardiff fan. So many heroes of mine played there on that pitch. So I just wanted to soak up the atmosphere, have my family there, friends there. Then when he pulled me back in, and I came on the pitch, made my debut. I've still got the video of me, the board coming up. I think I replaced Chris Barker, the late Chris Barker. And as soon as I ran on, it was a Jason Kumas free kick. And I've got the clip of the fans singing for me to do the Ayatollah. Mm-hmm. And that was all I'd ever wanted. It was strange. I'd sung it to so many people. So it's not until later on you think, I've just made my debut for Cardiff City in the Championship. Home to Norwich, we lost the game 1-0. What an amazing, still to this day, probably the proudest moment I've had in my career. Retired now. But the build-up was always huge. You never felt close to the first team. Always felt like it was miles away. It was just people that I grew up watching were in the first team. I could never expect myself to be in it. So when I finally did, it was very, very special.
Yeah, it's an interesting one as well because, like you said, like playing for your hometown club, the club that you've supported and gone and stood on the terraces or sat in the seats, there's definitely going to be a different feeling about that. But in the moment, I guess it's, you're just kind of all about the game and then the play, and you take it in after the fact. But also on the academy side of things, one thing which struck me there is obviously you were with the academy like 9, 10 all the way through. And I think particularly these days with academies, some kids are in there so young, 7, 8, 9, is they go through all the age groups and they almost naturally expect then when they get to 16, 17 to get their professional contract. But they don't realise that when they hit 16, they're not just competing with the squad, they're competing with the whole of the country because it obviously opens up. But obviously in your day, it was YTSs, which is slightly different. Were you still in the era of doing jobs?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. big fan of John, well, not back then, but I am now of that upbringing. And you're right. You know, Cardiff was the biggest club, or still is the biggest club in the area, and it wasn't even an academy back then. It was a centre of excellence. We'd only play teams in the southwest. So we'd play your Swindons, Plymouth, Bristol Rovers, those teams, Cheltenham. And it wasn't until my second year of being a YTS we changed to be an academy. And I think the first game we played Everton at home at Treforest, and there was like a bit of a crowd there, and we were like, "What is this going on?" And we ended up doing well. We played Arsenal's, Chelsea's, did well in those games. I was in the team with Joe Ledley and Cameron Jerome, and it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't until that moment where it was a case of, like you said, we're not just competing in this small little group anymore, this small pond. It's now, it grows bigger, and the amount of players I saw that at different age groups where I thought you're the best player and they get released, and I think you're the best player and they get released, and I don't know why I stayed in or they kept offering me contracts. I don't, probably because I was probably better than I thought I was as such, or consistent, or had the right attitude, all these things. But yeah, I never thought, it's your dream always to be a professional footballer, right? And that was my goal. That's all I wanted to do. But actually, the thought of it, I don't think you ever kind of understand what it is or what it takes or what it looks like. Every kid goes, I'm going to make it into the first team, whatever academy, and I'm going to end up in the Premier League. I'm going to win the Ballon d'Or. I'm going to be the best player in the world. No one thinks, I'm going to make my debut in the Championship, spend 15 years in Leagues 1, Leagues 2, Leagues 1, League 2, promotion, back down again, have a year in the Champ and then come back down. And actually, for most people, that is probably more realistic of what their careers are. So I was fortunate. My dream was to make one appearance for Cardiff. I managed to make 2, so I doubled that. But and going back, I think one of the only regrets I have in football, not a regret, but I wish I'd stayed a little bit longer and tried to break into the first team more consistently. Wasn't to be, and I made my decision, which I was comfortable with. And yeah, it's like you said, it's not until a bit later on where you look back and you think, you kind of really deep it of what it is and how tough it was, and actually looking back and thinking all those players I played with from the age of 9 to 18, 19, 20 who never made an appearance or made one appearance in the Football League and then dropped out and didn't have a career. I was very, very fortunate to spend, full-time football. I had 21 years in it, so I was very, very lucky with that.
Yeah, and obviously on the flip side of that, a lot of those players who you played with went on to be successful footballers and the rest of it, then had great careers. It's a cruel game, particularly at the 16, 17. It gets really, it's just cruel, isn't it? Like, you can be a very good footballer, but if you don't do the right things off the pitch or you get a bit distracted. You mentioned centre of excellences, and I think when I was sort of 15 to 17, I was in the South Wales School of Excellence, and it was only when I got to sort of mid-20s that I realised what an opportunity that was and how close I could have been to if I'd had the right attitude. I didn't know. I was more interested in going out with my mates and doing things I shouldn't have been doing. But I find it really fascinating looking back, because I played cricket for Glamorgan as well. So I had those opportunities, and I clearly was somewhat able, but I never had the right mindset. And there's something which I say to my son a lot, is because he's very good at football and he's been sort of in and around the academy system, but it's that the thing I'm trying to make him understand is you've got to do the extra, and it's that extra, I think, maybe that is the difference ultimately between the ones that make it and the ones that sort of fall away. Because I saw, even me, who had nowhere near being a professional footballer, but I played with Jermaine Eastoe, who was at my age, and his focus was just all on football. That's all he thought about. And I look back and I think that was the difference. In many ways, he wasn't the best player in our team, in our grassroots team, but he was the most focused on making it as a footballer. Yeah. And he did. And I think, do you look back and you look at some of the players that you played with, sort of academy age, if you like, even though it wasn't academy at that point, that they had the ability, but maybe they just didn't have the breaks or the the mentality. Because I think there's always footballers that look back on players that they think, wow, he was so much better than me, or he was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I was never the best player in my age group, and I always saw people way ahead of me, and it was always about them within the age group. And each coach, they probably don't say it, but they'll identify a couple of players and think they're the ones that we're going to focus on to make the next step or to play above their age group. And we had a couple. We had a boy, I remember, Kyle Morris, who ended up doing a YTS, but left after. He just couldn't handle it. Technically he was brilliant. He was one of our best players we had, but couldn't handle the jobs and the things like that we used to do. And it wasn't, people were there to play football, right? And, you know, Colin Pascoe at the time, who was our under 18s coach, who was a brilliant coach, went on to do amazing things in the Premier League. But he was a stickler for, you do your jobs right. And if it's not right, if you don't do it right here, you don't do it right out there, and it all matters. Everything matters. And that's something I took forward with me throughout my career, is that every tiny little detail matters. You've got to be really consistent with how you act, whether that's at 9 a.m. when you get in and have breakfast to playing on a Saturday afternoon. Everything matters. Some people can't get that and will never get that, you know, unfortunately. And they'll be the ones who might look back in 10 years' time and say, I wish I did it, I had the ability, for some reason the manager didn't like me. But there's a reason. There's always a reason why. And it's tough. It's brutal. It's ruthless in the fact that you're out there on your own, right? And you're in a team environment, and everyone gets told in football it's all about the team, which it is ultimately. But you're there to protect yourself. You're there to have a career for yourself. So you have to have both. You have to have balance of making sure that you do everything for yourself, which is right. And I think younger players now are doing more. They're becoming more professional. You see the amount of kids now you see on social media doing extra training camps. My nephew's just turned 7, and he's already been in the academy system. He's trained at Arsenal, at Spurs. He lives in North London, and you know, he's now doing extra sessions with private coach. And you think, kids are doing it now at 7 years old. Is it them asking for it? Is it the family's asking for it? I'll blame it on my brother for putting this kid through that. But it now takes so much more than it did back then.
Yeah.
And I know Jermaine, and actually dealt with Jermaine this summer as an agent of one of the players that he put forward to us. And he's determined as an agent as well. I'll put that out there. But yeah, it's just the psychology of players at that age group, and from probably 14, 15 to 18, 19 of really trying to find out where they sit within the pyramid as such, of not just their team, but within football in general. And it's tough, and you've got to be mentally strong. You've got to be adaptable to situations. You've got to, you know, here at Reading, everyone who's 14 and above, I think, gets taken out of their school and put into the school that Reading provide for them. It's a big deal at that age to move away from your family, live in digs, live with host families and things. And you have to be tough to go through that. And then, you know, as a parent, to put their kids through that, knowing that there's a great carrot at the end of it, and there's a career, and you know exactly what the kids want. However, they're the ones picking up the pieces if the kid doesn't get a contract, doesn't get a pro, doesn't make it, or has to move around the country to try and find his way in the game, or not make his way in the game. It's really difficult to navigate as well.
Yeah, actually, like one of the things that I spoke to a sports psychologist not long ago about. Her job was effectively to deal with players sort of 16 to 19 who've effectively been in the academy system since they were young, and then they've got to that age and they've basically been released, but they also don't have anywhere else to go. They're not getting a deal anywhere else, and you know, some of them don't have the qualifications, and she sort of helps them pick up the pieces, if you like, and focus it elsewhere. But on the job side of it that you mentioned, like, that stopped. I want to say, well, it would have stopped at some point in your career, wouldn't it, where the YTSs or the academy players were doing jobs around the ground. And I think you would know obviously much more than me, but I think now these days they focus a little bit more on education rather than jobs around the ground, even though within reason.
I'm sorry to
go on.
But the jobs thing was health and safety got involved, and safeguarding and things like that. I mean, funny story with that is my job, me and Joe Ledley, as first year YTSs, were in charge of footballs. So cleaning the footballs, pumping the footballs, looking after and we used to get shouted at if they weren't clean every day. Now, I actually had an accident with my hand pumping up a football that ended up in me spending a week off having an operation on my hand because I really damaged my hand. Still to this day, I can't use my hand properly because of an instant.
Was it Joe Ledley's fault?
No. I remember turning to Joe. I was pumping up a football, holding the ball, pumping up like that, and something slipped out. My hand went back over like a metal ring. As you can see, my hand here.
That's quite mad, yeah.
And the funny thing, the funny thing was, I was just started as a YTS, and there was rules at the time where you could only have 2 players in the physio room at all times. And the physio, it's quite small at Ninian Park, and it's only 2 players allowed in. So as I ran out, I left Joe and I ran. It was down the tunnel, this little side thing to the tunnel at Ninian Park. I ran back out to the physio room. I'm holding my hand. I've got blood dripping on the floor. And I stood outside because there was two people in it. So I just waited. Looking back now, and they were like, "You're right." I was like, "Yeah, my hand." And they were like, "Get it." Ended up having an operation on my hand. So the jobs thing was.
So was it all? Do you think health and safety? Why they stopped doing that? Or do you think there was?
I think so. Yeah.
Parents.
No. I
don't
think so. I think it was a health and safety thing. I think it got taken out. I don't think the players do anything here at Reading. We used to clean boots. I had Willie Boland and Tony Vidmars I used to do. And trust me, I would never want to not do Willie Boland's boots. I wouldn't want to be on the end of a shouting from him. But it was all part of it. And in fact, I used to love it because that was my, again, like I said,
that's how your window into the first team, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember my other job was to clean the home dressing room. So I'd have ball before the day, and at the end of the day, to clean the home dressing room with a couple of other players. And it used to really annoy me because I spent hours cleaning the dressing room. And Lenny Lawrence, back then, would then go in the shower, at 5 o'clock. And we'd have to wait for him to go and have a shower and then clean that back up again. And it's funny, later on in my career, a couple of years later, I played under him at Bristol Rovers while he was there. And I kept reminding him about that. Kept me back at Ninian Park for an extra hour every day.
Funny, a lot of people who I speak to about Willie Boland, they say, angry man, really good drinker, like Andy Campbell, and people have told us different stories about Willie. And we did a live event with him, I want to say it last year, now time flies, but he actually got me and my wife together. We were sat behind a camera, and I'm not going to tell the story again because people already know it, but it's strange because we've never seen that side of him, the kind of the angry side that people sort of paint him as back in the day. But it's strange. We just see a friendly, nice guy who we're just friends with, but it's weird. But on that, so you mentioned the Reading players don't do jobs now. I'm assuming that a lot of focus goes on to education and making sure that they've got qualifications so that regardless of whether they make it in football, they've got that sort of side of it to fall back on.
Yeah, and there is a big emphasis on that, and every academy now has an education lead. What I don't necessarily agree on is they're all kind of shoehorned into doing a certain BTEC or whatever it is between those 16 and 18. And that started when I was as a YTS and everyone was doing a BTEC. However, my parents didn't want me to do a BTEC. So me and another lad ended up going to St. David's College and did A-levels. So while everyone was at the ground doing BTECs, me and another lad, I did business studies and PE, I think, at the time. And Lloyd Jenkins, who was a centre-back back then, he did PE and maths, maybe. Clever boy. And I'm glad I did it. A, because you're spending all day with these guys anyway, and it was nice to spend time with some other people,
outside of football,
and socialise and meet some new people. But B, I'm glad I did it because looking back now, it got me interested in business and studying that type of thing. So I know they have to do education. It's not their number one thing. The kids, you come and you ask them every week if that day that they go to school they have education. If you say to them you can train instead, every single one of them will say they want to train instead. But I get why they have to do it, and it's important that there's that holistic kind of training for these players, that they become humans and they become adaptable to the real world. rather than the bubble they're in football. And we're trying to do a lot here at Reading, where we're, for instance, we've got the chef helping them, learning how to cook, so that they're able to take little basic skills like that a lot of these kids don't have, to go home and be able to prepare a meal for their families or whatever it is. And also the PFA now of the last couple of years have really come into their own with the education. They created a business school that I ended up going to, and there's so many more courses now for younger players and older players as well, but for players to get involved in. I think it's now becoming cool to study. I don't think back then it was cool to have a degree or anything like that, but you feel like now there's more and more players, and the course that I've just graduated from, there's players who've won the Champions League, there's Premier League players on this course still wanting to learn. And I think it's going more down that route now than it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I think, do you know another part of that? And this goes for sort of, a player who's made it or is a bit older or younger players, is footballers do have, and I'm sure this might not go down well to some, but like footballers do have quite a bit of spare time, like after training and things like that. And then that's when younger footballers sometimes can fall into bad habits, going out and things like that. If you've got something else to focus on, especially if you haven't got like kids and a family, which you're going home to after training and stuff like that, and you just got like time to kill. So it's kind of like gaming or going out or whatever. All these things are fine in moderation, of course. But if you end up doing it daily or too late in the night or whatever it may be, it can be a bad habit that causes you a problem as a footballer. So having a focus to like an education or a degree or whatever it may be, I think is massive, because, we've all seen over the years, different footballers have different issues. And I think that's a proactive way to reduce it or to minimize the risk, I guess, of it happening, because I do feel sometimes, particularly in the Premier League, where, young players who haven't played a great deal of first team football can have a lot of money very, very quickly, but they've also got a lot of time. And I think that can be a bad mix, depending on, who you've got around you and things like that.
Yeah, and look, for the clubs, especially in the Premier League, like you said, their main priority is, can he play for our first team, or can he become an asset that we can sell on? Do they, deep down, do they care about if he gets his A-levels or if he gets a degree or anything like that? Their sole focus is to get him to be a player for their team. And it's horrible that the minute they're gone, more often than not, they're kind of forgotten about. I think Crystal Palace have just started something in the last year or so, which they want to house players that have been released from other academies and want to take them forward to their next steps of life, which I think is amazing. Yeah, and more clubs hopefully will follow suit with that. But you're right with the time, but it's just, these kids as well, they're not thinking about, I'm going to get released at 19, 22, 25, 27, whatever it is. They're thinking, I'm going to have a 15-year career, get to the Premier League, earn millions of pounds, and that's going to be my life. Yeah. But it doesn't, that's not the norm whatsoever. There's very, very few people that do that, and it's going to get harder and harder. So they have to, it takes a real strong character at 18 to say, I'm not going out today, I'm going to go home and I'm going to study, because the pressures of the team, pressures of your teammates, pressures of society, social media, whatever these kids see all the time. And these kids, they want to keep up with the Joneses. They want to buy what their friends have got. They see the first team every day. They want to buy the car that the first team players get. So it's really difficult, like I said, for them to kind of say, no, hang on a minute. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do and better myself. I'm going to study. I'm going to spend my money wisely. I'm going to invest it. I'm going to put it into my family, whatever it is. But I actually think that it's getting better now. There may be more money for the younger people, but it's actually, again, like studying, it's becoming cooler to save and invest and look after yourself a bit more. The talks of the change room from years ago was about buying designer clothes or cars or whatever. And now it's more into investments and people putting into property and things like that. So I think it is a positive, and it is going down a better route than it was. But also, like you said, there's plenty of time these kids that have, especially at a younger age. And the day is getting longer, though. It used to be getting at 10, you're home by 2 o'clock, and you got all the time in the world. Now you see players are in at 8:30, 9, they're not leaving till 4 or 5 o'clock. So they do have a full day, but they still have time if they really want to do something else.
Yeah, indeed. So, flipping it back to your decision to leave Cardiff, I mean, I am fascinated by that because, as you mentioned, it was a dream to play for the club. And look, maybe I'm mixing, confabulating my memories a little bit of you as a player. But I remember you as a kid having, a cultured left foot, being, like technically really proficient and looking like you could go on and be a first teamer for the club in the couple of appearances that you've made. So where does that decision and with you, with the club, with your family, like, how do you come to that decision? And because it must have been in one way difficult to leave, but then on the other hand, you've obviously made that decision for a reason.
Yeah. So what happened was that season, I think my first year pro, I made my debut at the end of my YTS. I played my first start at the start of the next season. And Cardiff had done well, were playing well in the Championship that year. And I went on loan. I went on loan to Accrington, played 6 or 7 games, loved playing, didn't love living up there and everything that came with it. But it was eye-opening, but it was probably humbling for me to do that. Second half of the season, I went on loan to Bristol Rovers. Ended up getting to the playoffs. Played in the 2 semi-finals. My loan ran out between the semi-final and the final, so I couldn't play in the final at Wembley, which was heartbreaking. In fact, that season I also was cup-tied for the EFL trophy or whatever it was called back then. Bristol got to the final at the Millennium Stadium, and I couldn't play in that either. So we ended up getting promoted with Bristol Rovers to League One, and I still had 2 years left on my contract at Cardiff. And I went back there were some talks in the summer. Bristol was saying that we want to keep you. Lenny Lawrence was there with Paul Trollope, and they were both saying, look, we want to sign you permanently. Cardiff have agreed a deal with us, but it's up to you. So I remember going back to pre-season at Cardiff, and I trained for a couple of days, and Bristol then put the pressure up a little bit, what's going to happen. And I went to see Dave Jones, and Dave kind of just went, it's up to you what you do. And there was no, we want you to stay, we believe there's a pathway. So I just thought, well, there's my mind kind of made up, really. And I genuinely believe if I'd have stayed, I would have forced myself into the first team and played a little bit more. But I knew I was going to go to Bristol. I was going to play. It was the division below. I got used to playing. I didn't want to then go back and not play and play reserve team football again. So I couldn't really turn down that opportunity. In hindsight, I probably wish I'd have stayed another year and maybe tried to play. If not, go on loan again, and because I still had time on my contract. But I just wanted to play first team football, and I ended up playing 80, 90 games for Bristol, and had a reasonably successful couple of years there. So and it probably helped me further down the line with other clubs and things like that. I could have stayed at Cardiff, not really played, and disappeared out the game. So it worked out how it did. And like I said, I don't really have regrets as such, but I kind of wish I'd have stayed a little bit just to try and see if I could have broken through at the time. But they had Kevin McNaughton, Chris Barker was there. So it would have been difficult for me to, 2 players that were so consistent, so solid.
Always fit as well.
Always fit, yeah. So it was tough for me. So, I'd seen the likes of Joe, Cameron get into the first team. Darcy played a little bit. Chris Gunter starting to break through. And I just didn't quite see that pathway for me at the time. But, yeah, it was absolutely fine. And you get to a point where playing first team football is more important than anything else. And yes, my affiliation with Cardiff, and I managed to get into the first team, and that was a huge tick box for me. But now I wanted to kick on and carry on the rest of my career.
And then I guess as well is you were obviously still young then. Bristol's not too far, is it, from Cardiff?
Yeah.
So like if there is any kind of, although you'd been to Accrington by then for a while, so I suppose you've been away from your family. And I think that's something which fans really don't appreciate sometimes, is some of these young footballers leave home very, very young. And that can be a big adjustment period, whether it's just not knowing anyone, or it's just not knowing where to go or where to get your shopping from. It's all kind of contributes, doesn't it? And I think it can be difficult, especially, I don't want to say like if you've got a dressing room which is cliquey, but like if the dressing room, if everyone kind of knows each other and you're a young player coming into it, you are somewhat reliant on them making you feel welcome and going that extra mile to kind of include you in the group. And if it's not closed off, but like it's just a bit of a difficult dressing room or whatever, it can be hard for young players to settle when they've moved away from their kind of safety net of their friends, their family, whatever it may be. And I think definitely as football fans, we sometimes forget that when we're criticising people's performance or whatever,
absolutely. You don't know what's happened that week of whether players have, you see it now, so many players commute, they stay down a couple of days a week or stay up a couple of days a week. They're away from their families, they're away from their kids. It's tough. It's not easy. And, there's no excuses. Like, as soon as I signed for Bristol, I moved to Bristol. I lived in the area. When I went on and played for Oldham, then I moved to Manchester and stayed up there. I remember Christmas Day spending it on my own in a flat in Manchester, and saw my parents a few days earlier. Gave me like a Christmas dinner for one to take back, because you've got games on Christmas Day or Boxing Day. Sorry, the amount of times I've travelled on Christmas Day and spent it in a hotel it can be lonely at times, but it's hard to. I loved it. I love football. Every single minute of it, I loved, and I don't want to say, look at us, it's so difficult at times, because it is the best job in the world. But there was also that human element as well of loneliness and feeling isolated. And, the highs are great, the lows are really low. And you're always having to put on a brave face. You can't, if someone's having a go at you all over social media, you can't bite back at it. But you see it. And when managers and players say they don't see it, they're lying to you. They see it all and they feel it. And it's hard, it's tough, and they know that comes with the job, it comes with the role. Does it make it any easier? No, but ultimately there's a human being behind that footballer or that manager who is trying really, really hard. They are. I've never seen anyone go onto a football pitch and not try their hardest. I know maybe it looks like sometimes it is, but they don't. So it can be tough. I said I've been very fortunate I was never out of contract and didn't have another contract to go into. I see so many friends of mine that have been, played 40 games in a season and then can't get a club, and it's tough, and what do you do? Because at some point you have to make a decision. Do I stop playing? Do I try and get a job, especially in the lower leagues? You don't earn the money that you do in the Premier League. And
Joe Rose is in that position now. Like Joe left, got released by Cardiff, or they agreed mutually to leave, and he was club captain, and then all of a sudden he hasn't got a club. And you're thinking, wow, it's October and he's not playing football, and it's incredible, really. Interesting on the social media thing, and then like players seeing stuff, but they can't comment and stuff like that, which I fully accept. They just can't, can they? And that gave me a really unique insight into it when I went up to see MORRISON and we had a chat and filmed it and everything. And he said, like, I think in the first intro to that sort of interview or that podcast, he said, like, I saw what you said about me. I saw your critique of my tactics and stuff. And I was like, it did give me a very different feeling. Like, I like to think that I'm very fair. And I said that to him. I said, I'd like to think that I'm very fair. And it's never personal. Like, and I say that to everybody who does stuff for me on my channels, is that it can never be a personal attack on X, Y, and Z. It's always got to be about the kind of the football. And I'm very clear about that. But it did make me think, and I started to think back then, and I was like, have I said anything about Omar like that? I wouldn't want to repeat or something like that, or I've just in the emotion of, after a game and it's been poor, have I kind of gone off on one? But it gave me food for thought, I guess. The players, because I know now that there's Cardiff players and the manager was watching what I was doing, which is great, but it's also a bit sort of weird as well at the same time. So you left Cardiff. You had, like you said, you've been on loan to Accrington, Bristol Rovers. you land yourself at Wycombe, and you play a lot of games there. Now, you played over 500 EFL games anyway, but Wycombe was the one which you spent the longest. I'm not going to take you through it, step by step and everything, but kind of sum up your time there, because you were so well respected within the EFL. I think EFL fans anyway, but those Wycombe fans loved you, and you were the senior player by the end of it.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I joined and I was probably one of the senior players, and joined at 27. You don't expect to be at a club for 10 years. And funny enough, going back full circle, what you said earlier about playing for Glamorgan, the first conversation I had with Gareth Ainsworth, I was at Sapphire Gardens watching a T20 match with my dad, and I got a phone call from Gareth Ainsworth and had a chat. And I remember at the time they just survived relegation from League Two, and I just had a really good season in League One with Shrewsbury. Personally, we got relegated, but I got Player of the Season. I thought I'd had a really good season. And I was like, I'm not going to the bottom of League Two, and I had some options, but I spoke to him again, and I really enjoyed my chat with him and what he saw football and for me. Ended up signing there, and just from day one, we clicked as me and the gaffer, but also me and the club, and it just was a great fit. And also we had success from day one, which also helps, right? And I think every year we were successful for what we set out to do. We had 2 promotions, we had 2 other playoff finals, we had cup runs, we managed to play Tottenham a couple of times, Man City, beat Aston Villa, or drew Aston Villa. So we had some amazing times there, and I loved it. I genuinely, it became home. You become a fan of the club. Obviously, Cardiff's in my heart and things, but you become a fan of the club, and Wycombe was just a great matchup for me. I said, having Gareth Ainsworth with his links to Cardiff as well, it's how we used to speak about things like that. And yeah, it was nice where I had the trust of the manager had the trust of me. I played, I ended up, my last game was my 400th game at the end of my 10 years, had a testimonial against Cardiff, which I wanted it to be against. And it was just, very rarely does that happen now where someone finds, people spend 10 years at a club, but it's from the start of their career. I said, the last 10 years of my career was spent at Wycombe, and the changes that went through from day one to when I left, and now even more so, they've gone on to a completely new level as well. But it was just, it was great going from, like I said, signing when the club were in the bottom of the league to being in the Championship, managing to get my game back at the new stadium at Cardiff City, scoring a goal. Yeah. Unfortunately, we lost to Kiefer Moore at the time, which was just brilliant. And that day was, especially during COVID. And it was, like I said, I had some amazing memories. Managed to score at Wembley, playoff final, and just everything I could have wished for when I signed there. Not that I'd ever thought we'd get to the Championship, but everything I kind of set out to do, we did. But not just on the pitch, off the pitch. We created a culture which I'd never seen in football before, and it's still talked about. And I remember one of the coaches was, at the time, I think Gareth Southgate, when he first went to England, was telling England players about Wycombe, about what they do at Wycombe and different things we do. We do loads of work off the pitch. Not sometimes the manager would speak to us on the Saturday and say, right, Monday and Tuesday, we're not training, we're going to France, we're going to visit the Somme, and we're going to go around the battlefields, and just did loads of little things to kind of humanise you again. It was amazing. It was great, and when I knew my contract was coming to an end, I still thought I could play a part, and that's probably the ego inside you, but you
always think you can perhaps do one more, or
and look, I was getting phased out, which was fine. Obviously, it's going to come to an end at some point, and it just got to a point then, do I stop playing? Do I carry on and try and get a year here? I had some offers to carry on playing, and I thought it's the right time to step away, finish on a high. 10 years at the club I loved, my 400th game, with all the success that went with it. I couldn't have asked for anything more.
So was your last game of football the testimonial?
No, that was the start of the season.
Oh, okay.
My last game was...
of course, and then you played the season. And the 400th game.
Yeah, so last game was Charlton at home. 1-0 victory. In fact, I got concussed during the game and should have come off, but I just couldn't. I couldn't get off the pitch. I remember seeing stars as the game was going. I got bang on my head, and but yeah, lastly, it was nice having all the family there, being on the pitch afterwards. Yeah, it was great. And like you said, the rapport with the fans I had was amazing. And it's a lot easier when you have success. The fans stick with you, and you know, like to think that I gave them some good times as well as them giving me some good times. So it just, yeah. And when I go back now, it's the fans especially are very warm and welcoming to me, and yeah, it's always a nice place to go.
Absolutely. So you mentioned playing Cardiff in COVID. What was it like to play during that time? Because it was such a strange period for everyone, again. But like, football was weird, wasn't it? Like that, empty stadiums and the rest of it.
Yeah, you get used to it weirdly. We came back for the playoffs. Our season got curtailed, and it was points per game. We got into the playoffs. We ended up winning the semi-final, getting to Wembley, playing in front of an empty Wembley, which was strange, but winning. And I was fortunate to play at Wembley a couple of times. But actually, when there's no fans there, you've got no distractions. So we just won the game, and it wasn't players running off to see their families and seeing fans. We just kind of sat on the pitch together, and we were there for hours. Eventually, the security told us we had to get out of there.
That's mad, isn't it? Because you wouldn't expect that.
No.
Like just to sit on Wembley's pitch. And
we were just literally sat there, and we just sat in the change room. We had a beer. We went and sat on the pitch, and everyone's faced on their families and stuff. And just like, what have we done? This is amazing. The club had never got to that level before. But then it becomes the norm. COVID becomes, and I think for us, that next season was in the Championship that we hadn't. Lots of players hadn't played in the Championship, so it was new stadiums, new surroundings, and there was that excitement more than anything else. I mean, we quickly came back down to earth after we didn't pick up a point for 7 games. I think it was.
It's hard. It is rough, isn't it, when you don't get a good start? I think.
Yeah, it's tough. Really tough. And you know, the last period of the season, I think the second half of the season, we were mid-table comfortably for form, and only went down by a point in the end, which was heartbreaking. I think 2 of our last 3 games, I think we played Cardiff and Swansea. Cardiff, I think we needed 1 more point to stay up. I think we were 1-1 against Cardiff at one point, and at Swansea we were 2-0 up and ended up drawing 2-2, and I think that kind of sealed our fate. And it was tough, but you know, it made me hungry to get back there. Unfortunately, the following season we lost in the playoff final to Sunderland, which was tough to take.
Done it all, haven't you?
Yeah.
Playoff wins, playoff losses.
Yeah. It's been, like I said, I've been very fortunate to experience a lot in my career in cups, in leagues, in playoffs, and things like that. So, yeah, look back with real fond memories. But the COVID time, it was great, and what it made you feel is the following season after COVID, we played a pre-season friendly against Leicester at home while they were in the Premier League, and there was like, I don't know, 6,000 or 8,000 at Wycombe, which was quite a big crowd, and it felt like you're a kid again. It was like the first time you played in front of people. It was amazing. It was so, and it made you realise actually without fans, football is crap, basically. Yeah,
100%. And I guess it would have sounded louder as well, just because you're so used to being able to hear the shouts across the pitch and everything.
Or that terrible crowd noise that some teams used to put into their stadiums.
It's just depressing. Just depressing. When you finished, or when you've made that decision to finish playing, was your initial plan to do a job like you're doing now, or what was your sort of vision of what was next for Joe Jacobson at that point?
So I started,
because I know you did media and you did things like that.
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I started thinking, what am I going to do? You know, you start panicking, what's life after football like? And I started training to become a financial advisor. That's what I wanted to do. So I took a few exams, and I just didn't love it. I got through a few exams, and it's like, this isn't for me. This is not what I love. And a few years ago, the PFA created a business school, and I saw a course that I thought, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to go into the business side of football. Never want to be a manager or a coach or anything like that.
Okay.
And the business school was great. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And during the last couple of years, I got quite close with the owners of Wycombe, and would just speak to them about business and football and how I see things. And we'd have really open conversations. And when I knew I was leaving Wycombe, the last 6 months, the owner, we used to speak a lot, and said, look, I'm going to sell the club, and I think I've been asked to go and buy Reading, and I want you to come with me. So I was like, well, okay, this is, we'll see how that progresses. And when the season finished, I had a couple of calls from other clubs, and my agent at the time was saying, look, do you want me to put your name out? And I said, not really. I was a bit unsure, and especially because of my time at Wycombe, I didn't want to I thought it was a good time to end. So I made the decision, right, I'm going to stop playing and go in with him at Reading. And, we came in the start of pre-season, we were in the building, we were advising as such because the deal hadn't quite gone through yet. And I loved it. I was like, made the right decision. This is great. About 2 months later, deal collapses. I was out walking the dog at home and had a phone call, and I was like, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
I'm back to square one. It's probably too late to go back into football. I was fortunate. I started doing a lot of media stuff. I did a couple of playoff games the season before. I was doing a lot of Sky games in the studio. I was doing co-coms, a lot of work with BBC and TalkSport as well. So that was kind of keeping me going. But the owner of the whole time was like, no, look, I'm going to buy the club, and it's going to happen. It might take a little bit longer, but it's going to happen, and I'm going to bring you in with me. And fortunately, in March, April time, it came back around, and he said, look, I think it's going to happen again. I've made sure not to get my hopes up.
Yeah, of course.
But and during this time, I was still studying. I was still trying to network. I was going into clubs and meeting sport directors and CEOs and things like that, and seeing what they were doing. Some really open people that were great to talk to. Finally, it came back around, and the last game of the season at Reading, we played Barnsley at home, and we had to win to kind of give ourselves a chance to get into the playoffs. And there was 22,000 there at the SCL, and we were like, this is it. This is what we want to do. And a couple of weeks later, the deal was done, and been in ever since.
So, what does your day? What's your average day look like in terms of your duties? What do you do? Do you spend it just talking to people on the phone, or is it like a bit of everything?
A mix of everything. I'm out the house most days at 7, 7:15, which is different to when you're playing. That's for sure. Yeah. Just on the phone. When the transfer window is open, how we do things here is we don't have a sport director or director of football, so the manager has a lot of say and the recruitment team on who we bring in. This summer, we had 5 players, I think, under contract at the start when we came in. So offering out, I think, about 25 contracts, signed 12 new players. I'm the one doing all the negotiations with the agents, with the clubs, and getting the deals done. Transfer window closes. That was, hard work. First thing I did was go away for a week because I needed a break. But then, like the owner said, now you can get on with your real job, which is, there's so much going on at the club. We're trying to change so much. We brought the club shop back in-house. We're looking to do something with the ticket provider. We've got work to do at the stadium, the fan zone, trying to come up with ticketing strategies. There's all these things that go on behind the scenes, which I'm in 3-4 meetings a day. I've got phone calls I'm on the phone to the owners twice a day in America when they're not over here. It's just constant, and when I leave at 5, 6 o'clock, I spend a lot of time on the phone on the way home as well, and speaking to the other guys at the club. If there's any issues with HR, there's so many things now that I didn't know existed within work and football and business that have opened my eyes. But I'm the first to say I don't know, a fraction of what goes on, but I'm learning. It's my attitude that I've had since I was a kid of that determination to be the best footballer I could be. I've now got the determination to be the best kind of executive I can be. I've got a great mentor in Rob Courig, the owner, who is desperate for me to do well, and I really want to repay him. And I spend a lot of time with the finance guys on the budgets, and it's just never ending. There's always something going on.
When you were a player, if you had to renegotiate a contract or you moved, were you one which would just leave it to your agent to sort out and kind of give them a guideline of, I want this or whatever? Or were you in the room all the time with doing the negotiations yourself? Because I'm interested in that, because when you've then taken this role, were you really nailed on and familiar with that sort of negotiation process, or was that even just new to you?
Not that I'd sit in with the agents, but I'd always give feedback of where I thought I was, and I was always quite realistic and fair with that. What the owner did like was I used to negotiate on behalf of the players, the bonus systems and things with the owners, and he quite liked that. He keeps telling me he liked it. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job, otherwise he wouldn't have liked it. But yeah, I'm comfortable with numbers. I'm comfortable with finance and the budgets and seeing where we see fit and things like that. So yeah, not that I was involved, but I feel like I know the market, especially in this division. I've spent a lot of time in this league. So when I am dealing with agents, it's interesting that a lot, agents get a bad name. Most of them were okay. I dealt with this summer, but
I bet you bump into a few familiar faces as well. Like you mentioned Jermaine earlier, but I know there's a few.
Yeah, there's ex-teammates of mine. There's and I've got agents calling me about players that I've played with who are friends of mine, and it's really difficult to separate the two.
I can imagine that.
But a lot of the agents would say, "Oh, my client's worth this," and I'd say, "Look, I've played the game. I know the role. I know where your client is, and he's not there." And a lot of them turn around and go, "Yeah, you're right," which is great.
It's their job, isn't it, to get the best deal?
Yeah, exactly, and they're just trying to do that, whereas I'm trying to do the best for our football club and the owners and things like that. So, yeah, it was really interesting, but you have to learn quick in this game. It moves very, very quickly, and what I've realised about Reading, again, very quickly, was that it's huge. It's a huge football club with a huge fan base, and the potential is incredible. It's probably the lowest it's been for a good 20, 25 years or longer. So it's up to us now to get it back to where it belongs. And, with that comes pressure. There's pressure from fans. There's pressure from the board, the owners who have invested a lot of money already. So it's tough, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm very thankful for Rob Curry for giving me the opportunity to bring me in, trusting me with the work that I'm doing. But also, we've got a really good group of people in kind of the exec team that we've created. And I've got no doubt that we'll all be successful here. So,
since you came into this role, what has been the most challenging day that you've had?
Good question. I've mentioned this a couple of times, actually, is that Joel Pereira, our goalkeeper, who for me is the best goalkeeper in the league last season.
So people who watch the channel will be very familiar with that name, because I did a scout report on him and said Cardiff should try and sign him in the summer.
There you go. I'm glad they didn't. He's he's top goalkeeper, and we had a fight to keep him this summer.
Yeah, I bet.
A lot of championship interest in him, and I thought we had a deal at one point. He was on holiday, and I was away, and I was taking time away to go and my wife, looking at me all the time. I was like, "It's important. Yeah. This is the job now.
Can't lose the goalkeeper."
No, exactly.
Especially in the first couple of weeks of you being in the job as well.
Exactly. It was important for us. First thing we did was sign the captain up to a longer contract, Lewis Wing. Joel Pereira is our next big one, and I remember him coming in for the day, and I generally came back from holiday. He was like, "I'm not going to sign. I am going to sign." He was in my office from 9 in the morning, me, Joel, and the goalie coach. It was a day where it was quiet at the training ground, and we spent all day. We didn't eat, we didn't drink anything, hours and hours, and he was going back and forth. Shall I do it? Shall I not? He was on the phone to his family, his agent. And I said to him, it was the longest day of my life. I spent in, eventually, it's got to be about 5 o'clock. He was like, "Look, I'm hungry." I was like, "You're not eating anything until we sort this out." And at one point, I just said, "Look, you've got to make a decision," and he did, and thankfully he signed, and and we made sure we had a contract ready, signed the contract, and it was done, and it was the relief at the end of the day was amazing. And one of the things that ex-players will say, and for me especially, is what I miss from football. It's not playing, it's that winning, that feeling at the end of the game. I don't miss the 90 minutes, I don't miss training, I miss the feeling of winning the game.
The relief and
and that's what it is. It's a relief. But signing Joel Pereira to that contract, I had that winning feeling, and I loved it. And I thought I'm able to get that feeling again. And throughout every time then we signed a player, it felt like that feeling. It was great. A new contract, it was great. So
we must have had that feeling a lot then, because you didn't have very many players in the summer.
It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. We ended up doing about 35, 40 contracts with new players and contracts and 21s and things like that. But now that feeling I get when Reading score a goal or we win, it's I celebrate a lot more now than I ever did as a player or watching as an injured player or anything like that.
But I guess it's because those players who score or create or do well, you've brought them into the club. So it's like you're, what's the word? Like you're warranted or you're justified for like the decision you've made. Like when you've seen a player or you with the recruitment team have thought, oh, he'd be a good fit or he could do this. And then when you see it in action and you're like, got that right. So it's like you're winning again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the owner, in the summer spoke about getting a striker in and we had to go to him and ideally we didn't really want to spend money on players as transfer fee, and we signed a couple in the end and he was very, very thankful that he was able to, put the money in for us to do that. And one of them was Jack Marriott, and to justify that, he's come in, he's started 6 games, scored 6 goals. So for us, that is the ideal situation. You can go to the owner and go, great. Not everyone's been as successful, and some have been injured and things like that. But it's nice to have a couple of those successes.
Indeed, I just want to circle back as well, just to make sure we get it on tape that you starved Joel Pereira until he signed the contract.
Yes.
No, it's I'm joking, of course. So I wanted to loosely talk to you. Like I know you were here with some of the problems that Reading have had with owners and just general, like the issues that they've had off the field with finances. But I just wanted to get like a general feel for, a lot of owners for a variety of reasons get a bad name. Vincent Tan gets a bad name. And of course, you've got things going on at Sheffield Wednesday at the moment with players not being paid and things like that. How difficult was it for the new owner and for you and the other people on the exec team to kind of, I don't want to say pick up the pieces, but, pick up the ball and keep it moving?
Yeah, it was a really fragile place. Staff who hadn't been given anything really in the last couple of years. No communication from the hierarchy, and look,
there was fan protest as well, wasn't there? Before
there's fan protest. There was a game that was cancelled. There was lots of things that the fans did amazingly well to raise awareness of what was happening. One of the things we didn't want to do when we came into the club was just talk about the past and what had happened. And one of the things that the previous owner did do was he spent a lot of money on this football club. He built this training ground and left this here, and they spent a lot of money, and obviously it didn't work out. Whether he's advised badly or spent the money badly is for people to judge themselves. But when it gets toxic like that, it's really difficult, and not everyone can get success. If 20 teams all put a load of money in, there's only 3 that can get promoted, right? So it's just about having that long-term plan. I think lots of owners come in and go, right, I can spend a load of money, get promoted, and everything will be great. Whereas it's not as easy as that. And Sheffield Wednesday are going through that at the minute. What happened at Reading is a similar thing. But ultimately, where the owners, I think, then fail is in they don't realise it's not just a business. A football club is people's lives. It's where people go to help their mental health on the weekend. It's their belonging. Exactly. Fans, absolutely. It's their belonging. It's where they socialise. They spend all week and survive and earn money so that they can go to the football on the weekend. And they want to see their football club just in the right hands. And look, if you ask the average fan, they don't necessarily want you to go and spend millions on players or overspend. They just want their club to be safe and represent the values that it always has done. And there's lots of clubs that have these peaks, but it's when they're on the way down and then the communication stops or the money stops coming in from the ownership, and that's when there's an issue. And you mentioned about Vincent Tan. I know for a fact he's putting a lot of money in constantly to keep the club running, and will get a bad reputation at times, but he's putting a lot of his own money in, and whether it's in the right places, that again, not for me to say, but these guys are putting in personal money, and it's a tough role, and they're putting people in place to trust to make decisions to get the club into the Premier League as it is for Cardiff or was for Cardiff. So I just want some of these owners to realise, they're going into a community where football club's often the hub. It's where people gather. It's where people congregate. It's where people go and support each other, and not to take the club too far away from that. Some clubs it's worked out really, really well, but some you see it and you just see when it gets to that point and there's an opportunity to hand it over. And I think that's the important thing, is when to step away and walk away. And we've seen that owners have refused to and not done it in time. And ultimately the people who suffer at the end are the supporters. They're the ones who are there and picking up the pieces and having to watch their team rebuild again. The players will come and go, managers come and go, the owners will come and eventually go, but the fans are the ones who are there constantly through tough times, through non-tough times. And you talk about Cardiff being in the Championship, being a disaster, going down to League One, where, growing up, and you all know the same, we were a League Two team, an average League Two team. In Minion Park, never thinking about the Premier League,
Yeah, of course.
Had those heights and then you have that entitlement of we should be back there. But there's 50 teams in the EFL who have that entitlement of we should be a Premier League team. So you have to earn the right to get back there and do it properly.
Absolutely. And do you know what's mad, right, just on Vincent Tan, is two things, I think, which have really harmed his relationship with the fans and kind of almost sullied it is, one, if he hadn't done the rebrand and if he had engaged more or better with fans over his tenure, he would easily be considered the greatest owner of Cardiff City ever, because he got promotion to the Premier League. He keeps the club afloat with at the tune of, I think, about £1 million a month.
At least, yeah.
And he's brought in some big names, blah, blah. He's done all those things. But that rebrand is such a slap in the face to the fans and the history of the football club that the majority will never get over that.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately there's nothing you can do about it now. Because it's in one way it's part of history, but it's sullied his sort of history at the club, unfortunately. But on clubs as well, generally, like we've seen too many football clubs over the past 20 years, big historic football clubs who have ended up going out of existence. And I'm not Sheffield Wednesday's biggest fan. However, I would be absolutely mortified if that doesn't end up with a relatively happy ending, because, Jesus, the FA Cup finals used to be played in at Hillsborough, and it's like such a historic club. It would be such a shame if that doesn't get sorted soon. But I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it will. I think it will sort itself out. Whether or not they've got to go through some more tough times to get there. I know the new football regulators coming in, so hopefully that has an impact on that and can help the club get through that situation. But like you said, it's that owners being responsible, not just financially, but to the community, to the fans, to the football club and the history. And I think, if you mentioned about Vincent Tan, and if he realised at the time what it meant to do the rebrand and not do the rebrand, I think he may have had a different opinion. But he would have done it in the first place because he thought it was the right thing to do and thought that it would get success somehow. Ultimately, that wasn't to be. But he has done a lot of good there, and with the new training ground on the way and things like that as well. He's not been shy to put his hand in his pocket and keep the club afloat and put a lot of money in. So, as a Cardiff fan, I really hope it has successful years ahead again.
Yeah, I think they've had a good reset now. So I think hopefully that'll be good. Listen, Joe, I've taken up far too much of your time, but thank you so much for inviting me to Reading's training ground and spending time chatting to me. I could literally just sit here and just talk to you for the next few hours. But I'm sure your wife wouldn't be happy, and my wife wouldn't be happy. So
I just have the anxiety of my phone missing emails and calls and things like that.
Yeah. But after Saturday, I wish you nothing but success, because you'll be coming home on Saturday, Friday, whatever, on the weekend. You'll be back in Cardiff.
Yeah, I'll be coming back Friday night. Spend time with the family. They're all coming to the game as well. I've told them that they have to not wear their Cardiff shirts underneath their clothes.
On top of the clothes.
On top of the clothes, yeah. Well, I'm trying to treat them and take them into the boardroom and the gas lounge and things like that. So they've got to be on best behaviour.
Yeah.
And actually, it's they're all from Cardiff, right?
Yeah,
they all live there still, so they probably do want Cardiff to win, but they also want me to win.
They want
to be successful. So unfortunately, I'm going to be a Reading fan on Saturday and hope that we get the victory. But going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if Cardiff have a really successful season as well.
It's all right. I'll give you a Cardiff City World t-shirt after.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, mate. Really,
Cheers.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming down.
This channel is powered by an incredible membership community on Cardiff City World and patreon.com/AcePodcastNation. Becoming a member unlocks exclusive rewards from early access to live event tickets, bonus content, and even the occasional inside transfer scoop when we get it. But more importantly, it allows us to bring you top quality Cardiff City content 7 days a week. Across those 7 days, we're talking match previews, exclusive interviews, instant match reactions, the breakdown podcast, tactical deep dives, the spotlight series, Bluebirds Rewind, Academy Focus, and just so much more. Led by myself, backed by an army of passionate Cardiff City fans, this is content created by fans for fans. Balanced, professional, and 100% all about the club we all love. If you enjoy what we do, then join the community today and support what we are doing as we help to keep Cardiff City World flying high.